wanted your view as well on the economic development that the emerging economies are going through. Both Mr. Ramos and Mr. Gorkov believe 2016 has been better, but they're not that confident of 2017. What would be your view?
Well, like, there's a lot of uncertainty, you know, particularly when you look at the African continent. There are a number of African countries that are still growing quite at a very, very healthy pace. You speak of South Africa, you know, the growth has basically been very pedestrian. Currently in this financial year, we're projecting growth of less than 1%, you know, and with the hope that next year, 2017, will grow even better, because we think the commodity cycle is beginning probably to be improved, you know. So those, I think, are some of the things that gives a positive view around the coming years in as far as our growth prospects are concerned.
Okay. We also have been members of the Fragile Five, as we were called in 2013. Just to get your view on that, there could be another US federal rate hike. There could be tremors coming from Brexit or from European banks, which are now shaky. Do you think that the Fragile Five or the emerging market currencies will face this better this time around?
I think it could be better. Could be better.
Okay. What are your thoughts, Mr. Ramos? Fragility is behind us?
The world is dangerous. So, but I think that all these things has already been priced by the market. I think that especially Brazil, we are trying to launch a huge infrastructure program, and probably as the lower interest rates in the world, the investors will interest to invest in Brazil. And I think that although we recognize that the world is a little bit dangerous, Europe, United States probably will grow up the interest rate. We are very optimistic to face this challenge.
Fair enough. Now let me come to your banking activities itself. Mr. Moleketi, did you look for any projects in India itself in the current visit, or for that matter with the other BRICS countries, but more particularly India? Our viewers would like to know.
You know, my experience, particularly in my interactions with the colleagues here in India, is that one of the things that I think is quite important is also the issues of technology and innovation, you know. And I think there is a lot of collaboration between ourselves and the Indian economies, be it banks, be it institutions, around the exchanges of technology. And we have seen at this point that the movement is from India into the African continent, you know, and we welcome that, you know, both in terms of capital, but also most important in terms of technology and also exchanges in as far as knowledge is concerned, you know. But I want to comment on this, the earlier question around the impact of interest rate changes in the US on our currencies, you know. I think the key question is that definitely our currencies are going to be affected. We anticipate a depreciation of our own currency, the rand. What we can speculate about is the extent of that depreciation, you know. And I think that is one of the things that I think once the US increases the interest rate, there is a movement of capital into what they consider as safe havens, which is the developed nation. And I think that will still be a story next year. But the issues is that what is important is that we've developed an understanding and anticipation and mechanism to mitigate the impact of these currency fluctuations.
But do you fear that the next red flag may not be the US Fed hike at all? It could be something else.
Absolutely.
Probably European banks.
Absolutely. There's so many factors that can impact on the rand. You know, one of which is the issue of the rating agencies that we're talking about earlier. You know that during their visit, we expect that towards November, December, they will pronounce the status of South Africa. That, depending on the extent and the nature of the pronouncement, will definitely have an impact on the fluctuation of the currency.
You want to add to this?
Yes, I think we have a lot of opportunity for between cooperation between Russia and India. And one of the examples of Interbank supports now one of the biggest projects in India. It's about Kudankulam nuclear station. And it's a project about $4 billion. It actually will be a new project in India.
What station is this? Power station?
Kudankulam.
Okay.
It's a nuclear station.
Okay.
New
Oh yes,
station
Kudankulam, the
built
one in South India.
In south of India.
Yes.
It's one of the biggest projects between our cooperation, and definitely Venkatesh will support this project.
Okay. Anything fresh that you will look at in India?
Yes, we're looking for a few projects because we're supporting Russian export to India, and as well we're supporting Indian export to Russia. In this case, we have a few projects in different areas, including different industries. Not just about oil and gas, about nuclear station, about power station, about equipments, about cars, and many things.
Okay. Well, Mr. Gorkov, Mr. Ramos and Mr. Moleketi, it was a pleasure and an honor speaking with all of you. Well, key takeaways from three very important bankers in the world is that world is still an uncertain place. 2016 has been better than 2015, but they have their fears about 2017 as well, especially with respect to currencies and interest rates, and therefore their strong support for a rating agency sponsored by the BRICS countries, so that there is an alternative viewpoint in the world and there is more knowledge about BRICS nations in this alternative ratings agency. Thank you very much for joining me.
The world economy is in the process of profound adjustment, and overall the world economic recovery has been weak, and the world is yet to find new growth drivers to replace old ones. China and other BRICS countries are representatives of new emerging economies. Despite the slowdown in our economies, the overall trend for continuous improvement has not changed. At this year's annual meeting, the Exim Bank of India proposed to carry out feasibility study into a credit agency of BRICS countries. At the just concluded meeting, member banks agreed to go ahead with such a work. Currently, under the Interbank cooperation mechanism, there are 3 working groups, and next year there will be two new working groups. One is on the credit agencies. Building on what the Exim Bank of India has achieved, CBB next year will continue to move forward on the feasibility study of the credit agency.